Okay, so we are going to talk about Gundamets, after Vogue Gundamets. Um, I I think it has also got another title, but it doesn't matter. Let's just call it Gundamets. So Gundamets came out after Wing, is that right?
Yes. Came out after Gundam Wing, I believe around 1996. So this is about contemporaneous with when Evangelion was airing.
So I guess both you and I, Heraclus, have written some reviews of Gundamets, and I put the links in the description. And one of the things that I felt was that you needed to have watched some early UC stuff in order to get this show. Do you also feel that way?
Yes, it is definitely a show that is, and this is one of the reasons it's often given a lot of praise, is a lot of people want like a feeling of old UC. And that comes in a couple ways. One, in terms of the groundedness. A lot of shows from Gundam Wing afterwards, especially Seed, and even parts of Double O, tend to engage in sort of wilder stuff where characters come back from things they shouldn't be able to, or sometimes it's just blatant plot holes, or sometimes the Gundams can just like do whatever the fuck they want. That really is not the case in something like Gundam X. It feels very grounded. Uh, the only thing that could remotely be called a plot hole that I can think of, which is really more a plot convenience, is basically a result of being cut, and they have to like randomly have the main characters find the a new ship really quickly. But that's about the only thing I can think of. It's well as well thought of because of that, and also because it helps that the background story is literally just the 1 year war. And in so many ways, this story is about what if the 1 year war almost, you could say, went nuclear, really destroyed most of the Earth, and what would be the fallout from that? How would people try and live on? And also, you get to see the representatives of Amuro and Shaw on both sides and see how they're dealing with the fallout from all this.
Yeah, like Gundam X is like it's not Gundam X isn't like, oh, what if, Xeon won. Gundam X is like, what if both sides gave it their all and basically wiped each other out. Like that is Gundam X. It's like the ultimate Pyrrhic victory. I mean, you can't even call it like a Pyrrhic victory. It's like the ultimate, like it's the worst case scenario for any war. It's like both your sides are dead or so fractured that you really can't call it a victory or a loss. Like it's just this draw. And going back to the groundness of Gundam X, what I really like about Gundam X is it does kind of have this kind of fallout, post-apocalyptic kind of scrounging for what resources you can have and whatever mech you can get, right? That mech is precious, even if it's like a simple, Zaku unit or some really ultra rare Gundam unit. Like it all of it feels like special and unique because
Well,
there's very few mobile suits around. There's very few people that know how to pilot them. There's very few people who can repair them effectively. And I think what adds to the groundedness is that even the most simple grunt units, they feel special and they feel important. Like you having a Zaku too, it means something. Like that means, oh, he's got a Zaku too. Man. Oh, that's neat. It isn't just like another grunt unit that you blow up.
well, that's interesting you mentioned that because I'm going to semi disagree with you on that. The show does a good job of you're right setting up like that in lore these things are special. However, it seems like every like vulture group that they come across in the At the start, just have a dozen, or maybe even a dozen and a half, or a couple dozen mobile suits under their belt, and it's just nothing to them, and they just get shot down, pew pew, just like that. The show never has it, at least not until much later, where it's like one mobile suit on one mobile suit, or a few mobile suits on a few mobile suits, and it actually takes a while, and it's quite challenging.
Yeah, so for a post-apocalyptic, I guess, setting, it's pretty light-hearted, I would
Yeah,
say.
this is pretty ideal in some ways.
Yeah, it's somewhat idealized. What it is trying to show is that even after like the worst thing possible, people come together and try and pick up the pieces.
Yeah,
And so what you
humanity
see,
thrives.
yeah, and so what you see world building wise is in the part of the world where you start out, there aren't many formal governments yet, but there are towns which are run and sort of defended, pretty peaceful. Everyone gets along, and they are defended usually by some sort of anti-tank cannons, if you're lucky, a mobile suit or two, and they use that to defend against the various bandits, vultures that come around and try and take whatever they have, which is valuable.
Right, and also even though it's just been only 15 years since the last war and all this destruction, it seems that the world might be headed towards another war, or something like that. Or at any rate, there are a bunch of small wars happening everywhere.
Yeah, this is kind of like this kind of reminds me of similar to like the Bronze Ages or like the start of like the idea of like the nation state, because humanity were originally like hunter gatherer, right? Like that's like our roots, right? But when we have like tools and civilization, first it was like the village, then the town, then you had like the city states, and then like you had the idea of like the nation state. And so Gundam X is quite interesting. The fact is that like a lot of these like there's not even like governments out. There's more like city states at most, right? And maybe
Yeah,
like the occasional village or town. And I think that's actually quite interesting. It adds to the groundedness. Like there isn't like the nation of X. It's like no, this is the city state of this. These are the people. This is the culture here. Like it feels very like it's not on such it's not as grand scale as say other Gundam shows are, where it's like several like factions and planets and colonies and stuff. It's like no, this is just like on planet Earth, and there's like maybe a couple of city states or villages that are fighting bandits and stuff like that. Like it's a lot more grounded than some other Gundam shows in terms of
yes.
factions.
We don't really get to see any flashbacks or anything about
The,
the time right after the war. We are just told that it was awful, that
yes.
there was no sun.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Happened for like 7 years after the event.
and the event, of course, I mean, the reveal that pretty early on is that basically they drop hundreds of colonies on Earth, killing 10 billion people or something. I think the population is supposed to be less than a million or something. Yeah,
Something
something like
like
that.
that. Couple
So,
million.
um, this anime got cut down from an original 50 episodes to 39 episodes, and I guess Heracles already talked about what effect this had on the.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it affected it too much, to be honest. I mean, you have slight rush in terms of where you're getting to in the story, but at the same time, uh, the like the final 3 episode arc actually feels very tightly paced and feels very good. I have like no complaints with that.
But Heraclius, didn't you say in your review that you felt like um, more time could have been spent on individual character backstories, like what they are about?
That's absolutely true. But
But
also, I believe if the show had that interest, it would have
enough episodes.
gone into those characters by that point, and it had not.
So you think that 39 episodes was already enough to do that? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of show pacing, if they'd already gone into the climax arc, or sort of the build up to the climax arcs, you try and do like the character flesh out episodes in those arcs where things are a lot more down low, and for whatever reason, the show had just chosen not to do any of those. It's not like there was no time at all. There was. There was.
Yeah, I mean stuff like the dolphin episode. That was, I mean, it was all right, but yeah,
Yeah,
that was.
I mean, everyone knows it for the memes of new type dolphins, which is funny. But yeah, there's not tons that happens in that episode. There are other examples, but anyways, we
Yeah,
should start from.
it's more of like a cool down like thing. It's like, oh, almost died. Oh, there's new type dolphins. Let's go play and have fun at the beach. We're not dying or getting killed by psychic robots.
Yeah, and it's also an excuse to like get the characters into the sea and to see a Project L or whatever, which is I guess some backstory for Jamil as well. So I guess Heracles was going to say that we should go back to the start. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess you want to talk about Garrett and how he ends up with the Freedom ship, hover ship, or whatever, whatever it's
Yeah.
supposed to be.
Yeah. Frieden, by the way, is German for peace.
I see. I see. Sure. Okay, so we are introduced to what's his name? The protagonist, Garrett.
Gerald ran.
Yeah, Garrett ran. And he's yeah, I guess he's
He's a scrappy, street smart teenager. What my little problem with him is that he's actually like a lot more naive, like than you would first expect. Like he has this weird kind of innocence about him, which I mean, I don't mind that about him, but like it kind of doesn't make much sense considering like the setting he's in and like the type of person he is. But continue.
I mean,
yeah, go on.
the thing is, the show sets up. He throws off a very happy-go-lucky persona, very energetic, but at the same time, he is someone who's cynical in his own way. And we see this when he starts to try to sell his Gundam. He's got everything thought out. He's got everything made in terms of like, oh, I've put in place this backup plan and this backup plan because of course you guys are going to try and kill me to take this thing. Stuff like that. Uh, so he's definitely grown up in the post-apocalypse. He just still has uh some of that youthful innocence in him.
Yeah,
Uh,
like I don't mean he's like by I mean innocence. I don't mean like he's entirely innocence, ladi dadi. But there is this kind of like innocence about him. Like it's not all completely gone.
no, no.
Hmm.
So we're first introduced to him. He saves a local town from like some marauding gang of mobile suit bandits. He like people have actually made memes about this. Like first episode, he like throws a flashbang towards the pilot's cockpit, uses a grapnel hook to get up, and then just opens the cockpit hatch and holds
Yeah,
the
jacks
mobile
it.
suit pilot at gunpoint, forces him out. And so after that, he's given like he explains that he's going to sell off the mobile suit because he's a little although he knows mobile suits, he's a little cost
Hesitant to have
averse,
one.
risk adverse. Yeah, because usually mobile suits are so valuable. He explains that if you have one, other people are going to try and take it, so you're really going to be shooting and fighting other people a whole bunch. And then, so he's given this job. He's told to rescue this young girl from a group of vultures. Who vultures are usually bandits of the desert who go around uh, taking parts from the desert, as well as often like raiding cities and stuff like that. So he decides, okay, yeah, I'll take the job. These vulture guys probably aren't the best. And you're saying I need to rescue this girl? Yeah, sure. So he rescues the girl, drives her off, and all of a sudden, the girl, this guy immediately starts giving off creeper give me candy vibes. And so
Oh yes.
Garrett decides to get the fuck out of there with Tifa. Uh, very okay. This is another plot convenience. Very conveniently, he picked up like a GX controller from the from that ship that he stole Tifa from, and he happens to come across a Gundam X that needs its G controller in order to be used. So he starts it up, fights them off, and eventually he's captured by the actual vulture ship, and and he starts to learn why they're doing what they're doing, what they're doing. Uh, Eventually, we realize and that it's all about their captain Jamil, who wants to create like a place for Newtypes, and Tifa herself, the main character, is a Newtype. Well, the main heroine. She's this very off character. You could say she's a bit like Rei Ayanami. She's like
Yeah,
very
she's a bit of a
quiet,
kudere.
very stoic, somewhat awkward around others. But she has like constantly great insights into people, and that's partially because of her own powers. Uh, and she can like sort of just by her nature understand people. She can also predict the future, all these other things.
Yeah,
And
so
so
she's a
from
new type, a very powerful one.
there, the story sort of becomes a semi-episodic arc-based character drama, usually most focused around Garrett.
Yeah, and I would also add another thing that Garrett is not a new type. And
No,
about
he's just a regular Joe.
yeah, and about Tifa, that she's a new type, but she's not a pilot, because usually new types are is pilots, right? Um,
Not for Tifa though, because and this is a bit of a plot hole later on, but like when Geralt in the second episode activates like the satellite cannon and kills like all those people, and she like freezes up in pain because she feels like all their feelings and emotions that
Hmm.
before they all died. It's like um
she
that
doesn't
never. I
feel
don't
that.
think that
Yeah,
happens. Yeah, that doesn't happen any like after a while. Like they kind of forget that plot point. But like in this show, it's like because in the previous shows, it's like oh yeah, you're a new type. You got like ultra instincts. You can feel all these emotions and stuff like that. You know, you're a big badass pilot. In Tifa's case, it's like she feels the pain of everyone that's dying close to her, almost to the point where her mind like shatters. And
yeah,
by the way, it's not one at a time; it's all at once.
yeah. But they just, as you said, they just forget about that plot point. I think
Oh yeah, they forget about that, which I kind of disliked because it kind of adds a bit more stakes of hey Geralt, if you're going around being a badass, your girlfriend's mind is gonna break.
yeah, I think the early part of the show does have some problems like that. Like as Heraclius earlier said, like the vultures kind of feel weak. I think
Well,
yeah,
what I was specifically mentioning on that, uh, the first arc is Garrett learning about them. Second first/second arc is the Frost brothers show up. They decide that they're going to. They try and steal Tifa. For this one new type laboratories that's still up and running, evidently being funded by someone we don't know who yet, and they end up rescuing Tifa from all that. It is actually a very nice little scene where we haven't explained the satellite cannon. The satellite cannon is like the gimmick for the main Gundam in this show. And it's basically there's a emitter on the moon that can send down a microwave beam, and you need that in order to fire this satellite cannon, which is gigantic cannon that can destroy. It's made to destroy space colonies. It can destroy huge swaths of
Yeah, so
ships.
imagine like the mega beam cannon on like the double Zeta gun, and this is that on steroids.
Yeah, and and it's used well as sort of like a gimmick for like battles and making them more interesting, because since it has to take an emitter from the moon, it can only be used when the moon is out. If you don't have the moon out on Earth, no way at all to get the emission from it. So oftentimes it puts our characters sort of against the clock. They have to wait until the moon actually comes out. They can use this emitter. They can use the satellite cannon. That's sort of the case actually in this little mini arc here, where they have to desperately fight off the Frost brothers. Then they eventually they do, and they're able to use the satellite cannon on the new type lab, and they have to exactly coordinate where it is they're going to shoot based off of Jamil's new type limited new type powers and Tifa's new type powers and them communicating. And if they get it wrong, then Tifa's just going to get vaporized.
Another interesting aspect about the satellite cannon, right, is it also had like there's also like vulnerability to the pilot before like the cannon goes off, and it kind of adds a bit more tension. And what I also like about the satellite cannon is that it's not the big power weapon or the big powerful special move, right, that's going to fill the barrels. Like, no, there's these trade-offs using the satellite cannon, because while he's using the satellite cannon, it has to charge up, and in those few seconds, Geralt or whoever's piloting the Gundam X, right, is vulnerable to an attack. And that's why I kind of like about the satellite cannon. What makes it cool is it isn't just like the ultimate attack that's going to destroy all opponents. Like, no, this is an attack that if it goes well, you're going to decimate your opponent. However, if it goes wrong, you are fucked.
Well,
And
it's
I think
not.
that really adds the groundedness of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like it completely depowers the Gundam or anything. It's just the fact that.
He has to stay still for a few seconds, and
Yeah, yeah,
those few seconds could be more than enough time for someone to fire off a beam shot at him or shoot him with missiles. Like a few seconds is all it takes. Like it does leave a window of vulnerability,
yes.
which I quite like about it.
Also, you can't use it again soon after for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can only use it once.
Yeah. Okay. So that was the.
But
Yeah, go on.
yeah, afterwards, Garrett, and this is like nice character building for Garrett. Uh, he puts off this very happy and energetic uh view of himself, but you can see that like when he meets, for example, Kid, yeah, what a name, who's like the mechanic and happens to be just as young as they are. He's like some genius. He's like very combative with him, and you can tell even though he's yeah, even though Garrett has this gregarious personality, he's not necessarily great at entirely at getting along with people, and he's very combative. And for the next art, the inciting incident is Garrett like drops a whole bunch of like whatever, drops some steel mills or something inside the hangar with all the mobile suits, and it, like basically could have seriously damaged or killed someone. Luckily, no one was there, and so Jamil lets him off without penalty, and Garrett feels really guilty about this. Some of the characters comment, "Is this really such a wise idea? He's a kid. Who's like been a loner. He's not used to having anyone show him kindness." So the next thing he does is he goes off and he tries to scrounge all things from this new without orders. And I think after he'd also screwed up in some other way, he tries to scrounge things from some nuclear reactor that's nearby, and which apparently usually has a whole bunch of valuable stuff, only for some enemies to follow him there, a shootout, and the reactor starts melting down. And who Jamil has this cockpit phobia, and he doesn't want to pilot a mobile suit. He's basically has PTSD from 15 years ago. So he goes out in the mobile suit because that's the only choice they have to save Garrett, gets him out, but this rock hits Jamil's cockpit, and he is mortally wounded. He has to go straight into surgery. And Garrett is absolutely crushed, absolutely devastated, completely hates himself for it. He's like severely, he's punished and given the cold shoulder by all the crew. And that's at the point where he just decides that he's going to leave. Why should I stay with these people? Uh, I'm better off being alone. I've always been alone. That's my way. So he goes off, tries to sell his Gundam, and it's interesting. You see this contrast where he is trying to run away from sort of these new friends that he's starting to form, and especially like his relationship that he wants to have with Tifa. But at the end of the day, and I've seen this in people, sort of this idea of once you start to upset someone, once you start to become a nuisance for them, and you feel you can't do anything about it, sort of this impulse to slink away, to get away from it all, and stop bothering this person, and also stop having to be bothered by their negative feelings towards you.
Yeah, I think.
Well, it's
Yeah,
partially because humans are social creatures. Like the natural state is hunter gatherer. Like if you don't get along with click clack click clack, natural instinct is just to go elsewhere. Like you don't get along with click clack or big toe or one of those people. So you just fuck off and go somewhere else.
Yeah,
Like
that's
that's
what
a
he
pretty
does.
natural reaction.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so afterwards, he goes off. He tries to sell his Gundam. He shows how clever he is. He has like a whole so people can't steal the Gundam. He has a whole bunch of explosives set inside it. Mentions that, hey, if I you better let me sell the thing, or else the explosives will just go off and nothing you can do. Gundam blows up. And this sort of femme fatale woman, who's also a vulture, Anil L, manages to purchase it up. And you sort of have a two sidetrack story at this point. On the one hand, you have you have those same vultures that Anil is associated with, setting up a trap for the Freeden and trying to take it over and steal their Gundams, loot, etc. And at the same time, you have Garrett who's trying to sell his Gundam. And there's this neat little scene where Anil, step after winning the auction, steps in to Garrett's room, and she essentially tries to make the moves on him. Evidently, she's attracted to him in sort of like his, I don't know, I guess you could say independentness, his boyish charm, whatever. And she and Garrett is like just sort of a little bit freaked out about it, and he can't trust her. He thinks that, well, maybe you tried to get, maybe this is just another method to try and steal my Gundam. And there's this nice shot where she like caresses his hand as he's pointing his gun at her. Uh, he blushes a little, and then he shoots the wall next to her.
I mean, to be fair, he doesn't really have any reason to trust her, right?
Yeah, and that scene comes off as it does come off as a bit like Black Widow-ish, creepy kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, yeah.
She just assumes that he's going to like her or something, right?
I mean, young boy, post-apocalypse, and pretty woman's coming after you.
Hot
I
chick.
think.
Yeah, but
I
there's also a very expensive Gundam
yes.
in between. So yeah, and I guess another thing to mention is that the enemy that Garrett was fighting at the nuclear plant was Enil, right?
Yes. Yes.
And Enil knows who Garrett is, but Garrett doesn't know anything about.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. Um. So let's see. She's 19 and he's 15. All right. Okay.
I don't know. She does not look 19. She comes across at least mid-20s.
Yeah, that was the
But
vibe I got too. Yeah, that's the funny thing with Garrot and like Tifa is that like they don't look 15. Like you think they're like the way they act and the way they look, you'd think they'd be like maybe preteens or like 13 or
I
around
mean,
14 around that mark.
Garrett I can buy as being 15. Tifa comes across as a little younger.
Yes.
Yeah. A kid, by the way, who's probably the youngest, is 12.
Okay.
Which, yeah, it's too young for a cat to reach. I mean, I guess that is a
Whatever.
genius. Yeah, that's right.
Anyways, that diverges into one of my main complaints for the show is they set up this fire trap. This other group of ultras sets up this fire trap for the for the freedom, and they start like burning all the mobile suits alive, and nothing really happens to them. Like they're oh, I'm in a pickle now, and the fire just keeps going, and it keeps going, and this is a issue that Gundam X actually has a lot, where you put the main
I
characters in a difficult scenario, but they don't seem capable of dying.
Right. None of the main cast dies.
Yeah, and this is what I was talking about before of how Gundam X kind of comes off as like a kids show Gundam in a way, and by kids show I don't mean like Sesame Street, right? Like I mean
like a
kind of like
shonen,
Ben 10,
maybe.
yeah, like a shonen.
Yeah. By the way, weren't the Frost brothers involved in some way in that fire?
Yes, not exactly. They have it where they try and bring they try and get Garrett back on the Freedom, because he's like done with everything. And I don't actually entirely understand why they did that. Well, actually, no. They were probably using him to. They probably figured that he needed to be on there to gather more new types, and
I,
so that the Freedom would survive longer,
I,
and then they can
yeah,
gather more new types, and then they can go kill the new
yeah.
types.
I think the justification which they gave at the moment, when they were like being all smug and trying to convince Garrett to go back on the Freedom, is because they, at least they said that the reason was that they felt like they needed to to defeat him on. They needed to get their revenge for being beaten, and that they can only do that if Garrett pilots.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but that's total bullshit.
yeah. That could have been just something that they said to sound cool or whatever, or maybe to deceive
Yeah, the frost
Garrett.
lovers to me come off those dudes of like they're just really super manipulative. Like they'll say whatever it takes to like Geralt leaving the Freedom is like maybe a little spanner in their plan, but they're gonna get him back. Like they're gonna have him work. Like basically, they're the type of people that they know how people operate and how they work, and they know exactly what to say.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
it also helps that they're actually rather talented in mobile suit combat. So
yeah, and they can coordinate pretty well because that they can telepathically talk to each other over distances as well. Okay, so I guess going back to, yeah, but so I guess the situation gets sort of resolved. And
I,
get, yeah.
as Garrett comes back, yeah, and so we have a number of arcs. After that, one like the next arc after that is a nice one where Garrett has to go through with uh well, it actually provides a good contrast of like the strengths and weakness of this show. The next arc, they come across this area where there's supposedly a new type going around, and it's this nice winter town, pretty well governed. But they're immediately attacked as they approach. Tifa's stolen from them, and the guy on the enemy side is a new type, and he has like this funnel type mobile suit called the Vertigo, and steals Tifa. They goes off, and of course that's sort of like a end of episode climax. And as he comes back, it becomes this issue where he we find out a little bit about their place. Karis is this artificial new type that works there. And we learn a little bit about them. He has certain issues with regards to sudden pain, because being an artificial new type, he himself was experimented upon in order to achieve this, and there were apparently quite a few before him that died along the way, in order to achieve this. And the person who's running this whole place is an old space revolutionary army uh like officer, and he used to be a pretty high up guy. And but it turns out he puts on this thing about, I'm just a nice guy, I do this for the good of all our citizens, etc. Well, it turns out he's something of a psycho, and he bears like a huge grudge against all the people of Earth and of the old Federation government for like beating the Space Revolutionary Army in the war. So really, he's just trying to build this giant mech, unstoppable doomsday mobile armor, and then he's just going to go on a wild ride and start killing everything in its way because fuck the Earth. The Earth. fuck those people. They don't deserve to live. There's even like this. Let me get the line up for my screenshots. Jamil sort of asks him, "Why can't you believe in the future?" And he says, "Before I can think of the future, I'd have to accept the past." And it's sort of so. If the war were all for nothing, my whole life would lose its meaning. And while it's a little on the nose, you can actually totally understand it.
So one
But
yeah, go on.
oh,
One comment
uh,
about the last arc with Garrett. I kind of felt like that was the only bit of character development that Garrett got throughout the series. I don't think he really got anything more that much afterwards. I don't know what you thought about that.
there's another arc later. No, this is one arc where he gets some development, and then there's another arc later where he gets some development. But you're right; those would be like really the only bits.
I see.
This this arc specifically, Garrett is like trying is really wants power. He essentially he talks like explicitly that he wants a new type's power. He wants to be like better, all these things. Only for him to realize, as
He
he
doesn't need to be a new type to be a good mobile suit pilot.
yeah, and he's actually in a funk for a little bit afterwards. Uh, and he doesn't know what he's gonna do because he's like beaten like a new type, and he feels like he can't stand up to a new type in any way. That it's just impossible. And Jamil calls him like completely pathetic. And then they ask him, "You don't need this, right? The GX controller." He throws it onto like a pit of ice, a lake of frozen ice, and he tells him, "Hey, you want to go there at that? If you want to be the pilot, this is your last chance. Go grab that and show that you have like sort of the will for it."
Hmm.
Yeah, because I think the interesting thing about Garrot, right, is that in terms of like mobile suit combat, right, he's actually rather inexperienced. Like I think that's what kind of like he knows how to operate a mobile suit. Like he knows he's very knowledgeable about mobile suits, but in terms of like being a pilot, he is rather very underexperienced, right? And when he's fighting new types, it's like talent can take you where hard work cannot. Like he's going up against people like the Frost Brothers who are new types and they have experience, or he's going against that other new type in the town. Like that guy is incredibly talented. Like to Geralt right in that moment, he's like, "Oh, I'm nothing, right?" But as far as like the commander's concerned, it's like, "No, you are a talented mobile suit pilot in the making. It's just you need more experience." Because
Mm,
for Geralt, his talent is going to be his experience in combat. He doesn't need psychic powers. He just needs two things: his mobile suit and experience, and he's
mm,
good to go.
yeah. But that arc also showcases some of the weaknesses of Gundam X, and that is interspersed in between. The Frost Brothers will just attack the Freedom randomly, basically so that we have a fight. The reason the in universe that the brothers give is that they're becoming too powerful. They gotta nip them in the bud. Uh, but the result.
I mean, they say that, right? But my head canon is that like they were just getting bored and they wanted something to do in the meantime while all their plans are going off.
And the like they're totally beaten back. They don't do much of anything. And by the end of the arc, they're actually talking about like how much they're on the back foot, and it's like, great. These are our main. These are going to be like a main series antagonists for the whole show, and they're literally B tier villains compared to like the main arc's villain. This arc's villains. Like, that is not a good way to deal with your villains. And of course there's the old stuff that they keep doing where it's like Oh, you knock down the enemy. Oh, let's rather than using my perfectly good beam cannon, let me charge up my ultra beam cannon that has a 5-second timer, give you time to fly away.
Um,
Stuff like
I
that.
mean, how would you compare, say, the Frost brothers losing constantly to, say, Cha being unable to get the white. What was it called again?
I would say that like the Frost brothers kind of lose a little bit of that intimidation factor. Like, yes, the Frost brothers are intimidating because they're like manipulating people and they've got like pawns among pawns among pawns among pawns. However, with Char Aznable, he didn't lose like that edge about him. Like, he was always like one step away from victory, or like it was always like circumstances that like kept him away from getting like the final kill. But and also in Triasmal's case, like he kept on coming back with like better mobile suits or more like plans and stuff like that. With
Mhm.
the Frost brothers, it's just them in two mobile suits for the most part.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like the Frost brothers, they do the same thing over and over again. With Char Aznable, he changed it up quite a bit, and he did think outside the box.
I
Yeah, the thing is, like, Shaw, you're right, is constantly reacting to things. He is somewhat one. He actually like disappears for a large portion of the show, and then comes back. I guess these guys sort of do as well, but he is always a grave threat every time he comes on. He is always sort of like the focus of that episode. Uh, Meanwhile, the Frost Brothers are literally side characters here. Uh, like they're literally easily beaten back, whereas like with Shaw, it's usually he it's usually like someone else gets blown up, his support is gone, and now he has to fall back, or flat out the white base isn't his objective at that point. It's setting other things up.
yeah.
Yeah, and the thing about like Charizard is that like even though he's got that rivalry with Amon Ray and stuff like that, I mean most of the shit that he wanted to do, he's completing in at the same time. Like the dude's like if you think the Frost Brothers plans are convoluted, like Charizard is like he's got like 1,000 things that he's doing at once, and he
Mm,
basically ticks off all those boxes. Almost every time he shows up, he's always doing something. Like he's
mhm,
always advancing some military goal where he's coming back with a bigger, more powerful mobile suit. And I just think Char is just a lot more intimidating because unlike the Frost Brothers, where right off the bat, like you know that they're gonna be doing something, like they're gonna be machinations and shit. With Charizard at first, you don't exactly know that, and then you see Gamma die, and it's like, okay, what's that about? And then you see all the stuff happening, and then with Lala, and it's like, oh, okay, there's a lot more going on here.
mhm.
Did you guys realize early on that the Frost brothers were going to be the main villains, the final villains, or did,
Y-
hmm.
yes.
I thought that they were just some minions, and we would get to see later on who is behind them.
They're
That's a
the type.
fair guess, but
Yeah, that's a fair guess. Like why I thought that'd be like the main villains, right? Is that like halfway through the show, like halfway through the show, you've always seen them like manipulate two different group, like almost 2 to 3 different groups of people, and I'm like, okay, who are these? Do these people actually work for someone, or are they like upping their way up the chain? And my
mm,
guess is like, no, they're kind of like going up the chain as the show goes on. Like they're just taking out more higher and higher profile people. And I kind of got the impression I was like, yeah, these guys are probably going to be like the main villains.
mhm.
Like they seem like like for some of the shit they do, they claim they're following orders, but like some of the stuff they do, it's just like I don't think all of it is all like orders. Like there's a lot, they're a lot more independent.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a post-war setting, so like the people in charge have no idea what what's going on. Other
I mean, if they were like part of some like crazy like Black Ops unit shit, I could get that. Like I can understand like, oh yeah, these are like the minions for the main villain. But like if you look at like the openings and shit like that, like the Frost Brothers also show up in that. like they show up constantly as like the dynamic duo that our heroes must defeat. So
Yeah, I
the
see.
show kind of shows the idea of like, yeah, these are actually your major villains.
Yeah, I mostly skip the openings, so I didn't see that. But yeah, um,
Why
right.
the openings of the show are great.
Yeah, yeah, but I just wanted to finish watching it as soon as I could. Um, yeah. Anyhow, so another reason why this show has less tension, I also felt like, is because there's not an actual war. Like they're not actually fighting a war. Like anybody on the freedom, if they wanted to, they could just leave, basically. And yeah, that would be the.
I would have to disagree.
You don't think
They
so?
did actually fight like in an actual war. Because in the later half of the show, like the world government basically tries to start up again, and they're trying like to invade like these major like city states and shit. That is like an actual kind of proper war. Like at the beginning, they're more participating in like small skirmishes or like encounters with gangs. Not really a war, but like definitely in the later half, yeah,
Yeah,
they're
but
getting into like the
yeah.
war territory.
Yeah, but they are mercenaries. They are not actually fighting for like one side against the other all the time, essentially.
I mean,
But yeah,
they're still being shot at. I mean, that is quite tension filled. I mean, have you tried like signing up for a battle and it's just like you're
yeah,
getting shot at and
yeah,
shit?
yeah,
Like it's
sure,
quite
sure.
tense.
But they could just leave. Like they're in the conflict because they want to be in the conflict. It's not like the white base or
Yeah,
whatever. Yeah.
quick question, good student. If you're a mercenary company, right, and you basically leave halfway for the job, how do you expect to get like more employment? Like that's my question.
Except that they're actively set up as being contractors, and it's actively set up as like there's no way of verifying these people or anything. You just move in and out.
Yeah, true, but it's just like if you're saying like if they're mercenaries, right, you'd think want to like, yeah, we're a reliable mercenary band or whatever.
Mhm.
Like that's just kind of my thing of it. Like that's kind of like my contention with that. But we'll move on.
Yeah, I mean it's because I don't know. I was comparing it to like the first Gundam series where like they were like in space being pursued um with like no way out. But anyway, let's move on.
Yeah,
Uh,
like I do understand that there is like a lack of tension.
but you think it's more because of the choices of the show than the
Yeah,
premise, I guess.
yeah.
Um, it's not because it's not because it's a post-war as opposed to like a war setting. You think it's still a war setting even though it's a post-war setting. All right, or at least
I
it
mean,
becomes so.
I
It
mean,
becomes so.
post war two, we had like the Korean War 10 years later, and then like Vietnam and shit. So
Yeah, in some ways you could say this is almost like somewhat Korean War-esque. It's like the epilogue to the last war.
Yeah, yeah. This did feel the series did feel sort of like an epilogue to the early UC Gundam stuff, especially with the discussion of the new type theme. Because I kind of felt like so the new type thing was kind of introduced uh,
yeah,
a
because
little
like
bit.
the
But
interesting thing about like the interesting thing about like major wars, and I'm not talking about like world wars, but like historically, right? Like usually before a major war kicks off, you'll have like a bunch of like smaller wars, like that lead up to like the leading incident, and then afterwards you'll have like a few smaller like kind of wrap up wars.
yeah.
Um, and this is kind of like the same with Gundam X. It's like they had a big giant fuck off war, right? And now you have these like rival city states and vultures and these kind of like early government structures coming into place. Like you're getting like these little mini wars going off between like at most you've got like these regional conflicts kicking off. Like this is kind of like wrapping up the shit that wasn't fixed in the big major war. So
Yeah,
that is yeah, I'm finished.
yeah, the world building is overall quite strong. The
And
thing
it makes a
is,
lot of sense.
oh yeah, yeah, it is. I remember like discussing with someone like this does feel like a area or like a setting that would be good for exploration of like an RPG or something like that. It feels
Oh,
like it would
yes,
naturally.
this feels like like this is the type of setting, right? Like it. This would make a really good like RPG game. Like if you want to do like a ragtag band of mercenaries or explorers, Gundam X would be like a good setting to do it in. Like you got like this the deserted wasteland, very few people around, mobile suits are rare. You could get ambushed by random bandits. There's a survival aspect. Like this would make a pretty fun setting for an RPG, for a Gundam style RPG.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it also like so I remember that in the in the Gundam Wing talk we talked about how like the messy factions between factions.
Yeah, this is not messy like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And we said I think that. The reason it might have been like that in Gundam Wing, other than the faults of the writers, is that it's like a civil war setting, whereas here it's
Yeah, it's trying to capture like the chaos that happens in a civil war. Like, for example, if you look at like say China or Japan, I mean their civil wars isn't just like two factions, right? It's like several factions within factions. I mean, Sengoku Jidai or like the Three Kingdoms is like a pretty famous example of that shit.
whereas here it's more like a post-war setting, so that might explain why like you can't keep up, you can understand who is on whose side, and
Yeah, like
yeah.
I can keep up with like the faction stuff. Like, okay, they're part of this country. They're fighting this country or state or city state. Like, it's a lot more easier to keep track of, and it's less convoluted. It's like, okay, they're fighting over resources or territory or stuff like that. Like, it's a lot more simpler to follow.
Yeah, and also like a lot of the conflicts and stuff feels contained to whatever place that stuff is happening, at least until towards the end.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the biggest these battles get is maybe like a region, but for the most part, it's like urban city battles or like outside a city. Like it's pretty
It's not a total war.
grounded.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not total war. It's just kind of like, yeah, we're gonna fight in the city. We're gonna fight like outside the city. Like it's pretty like the biggest the show gets until like space is probably like maybe like a regional conflict.
Yeah, and I don't know, like maybe that's one of the reasons as well why it doesn't. It feels a lot more lighthearted. I don't know, but again, it's probably the choice, just the choices of the show. So where we left, where did we leave it off? The story. So it was the arc
Yeah, it was before Newtype Dolphins.
before Newtype Dolphins. Okay. Um.
Well, yeah, as the thing is, after that major arc with Karis, and he eventually takes down I guess you could say his former father figure and semi-creator, and he decides to start governing his place justly. Um, explain everything to the citizen populace. uh, the Frieden goes on a big journey, like across the ocean, and it's at this point that the show really, really slows down. I'm guessing this is the part of the show where like a whole bunch of the ratings just dropped off because nothing much is going on. You get a single character episode focused on Royaby and Wits, but even then, there's not. Wits has a nice enough arc thing where he has to deal with uh he's been keeping secret the fact that he's a mobile suit pilot and that's how he makes money for his family, whereas his family's been keeping secret the fact that his mother's remarried, and both of them have to sort of come to terms with that. Willoughby, it's like harder to care as much about because he's sort of like just visiting all his old
Playboy.
squeeze. Yeah, he's a playboy. He's visiting all his old squeezes, and it turns out his favorite squeeze randomly died, and so he's kind of saddened by that. It's like, yeah, okay, I can sort of get that, but it's when you got all these other people you go after, it's
You're
harder
like the
to
dude
feel
has
for
more
you.
women than Ryuho from Scryad.
Yeah.
So yeah, and again, we don't really see. So I guess from this point onwards, these two get incorporated into the crew of the Freedom. But other than that, that's basically it. for their characters for the most part.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like that's it. And then afterwards, you have just there's the random new type dolphin episode. There's just sort of a lot of episodes of them crossing the waters, doing like nothing as vultures randomly attack them, and like fatal attacks on them, which should be they're not. They run into Jamil's like old love interest from the war beforehand, who's like encased in something.
Like amber or something like that, like some
Yeah,
sort of fluid.
encased in amber or something like that. Yeah, and she's able to communicate, but and able to help them defeat the vultures. But even though it's like supposed to be a character development arc for Jamil, he doesn't really get much of anything out of it. I didn't feel.
Hmm.
Yeah, like it's like to me that whole thing felt a bit more like a nostalgia trip to him.
Yeah,
I thought that they were kind of like trying to work on, or the new types are victims of experimentation and whatnot, that whole thing. Um, because just before that we had the new type dolphin thing, which again was an experiment from the previous war, to create new types or whatever. But yeah, but other than that, it doesn't. Which I guess is connected to the whole thing about new types. But other than that, it doesn't really add anything. Um, I guess we get to see the flash system here, right? Or don't we?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. You get to see it used. It basically you think like funnels aren't good enough. Okay, whole remote controlled mobile suits.
Hmm.
And it does sort of make you wonder. It's what exactly is like the purpose of such things aside from like more satellite cannons. It, I mean, it makes sense in terms of the Gundam X, but we do see in the flashbacks that, like, the Air Master and the Leopard, which are, like, just a standard flying mobile suit, and then sort of have heavy arms, tons of conventional
Guns.
weaponry, tons of guns mobile suit. They also have, like, bit variants that can be controlled. And it does sort of make you wonder, gee, what kind of resources did they have? Was it, like, really the best to just have all these mobile suits when you could just have, like, floating guns that theoretically do the same thing? I
Yeah.
don't know.
I mean,
I'm totally nitpicking at this
I mean,
point.
I kind of felt like that was just introduced again to do for the Frost brothers to have a motive, to have something against new types, because the Frost brothers can't use the flash system, and that's a big deal or something.
Yeah,
Um,
we then get into a arc where we're introduced to the new United Nations Earth, new Federation boys. We find out the Frost Brothers are working for them. Uh, they attempt they attempt to take to bring in Tifa as a new type, and this again shows some of the weaknesses of the writing, where both the strengths and weaknesses, they actually do a very good job. Like, they have this nice roundtable scene where they show the villain of the week, I'm Zot, and they show that his new type thing is just one on a lower level of stuff. Like that he's very much competing for influence in this grander government that's sort of being put together. But even so, he's got his influence, and uh, he's going to push his point. So I mean, that's good world building. At the
yeah,
same time, you have things like the Frost Brothers announcing 2 episodes before they do it. Gee, we might have to kick off this Imzat guy, take care of him. And it's like, there is no reason. No, all it does is kill tension. There is no reason for the Frost Brothers to tell us that at this moment. That I mean, in universe, it makes total sense for them to be talking about it, but it's like all you're doing is killing the tension, killing the suspense. So now we just know what's going to go on, and we know how this arc is going to end. It's totally stupid. It is like hard to imagine why they threw a line like that in there.
I mean, to be honest, even if it had happened without them telling us, I wouldn't have been that surprised. I thought that it was like such
oh,
a big twist.
oh,
Yeah.
sure. No, it would have been like, yeah, it would have been kind of expected, but it's still like, do you have to announce it out loud? We're introduced to this character, Carrick, who Karek or something like that is his name. He's an old soldier. He holds a grudge against Newtypes, especially because they blew up the colonies as they got sent down, specifically against Jamil. Although he acknowledges that it's a somewhat irrational grudge because he knows that all those civilians including his wife, were actually gassed before the colonies were sent down. And he decides to. He essentially, after being captured, essentially brings them in. He has a death wish. Brings in the Frieden crew. They're basically given an ultimatum of we have a twin satellite cannon. Either you come in or we destroy your ship. So their ship comes in, and the result is that. But then like randomly they decide, oh, they have a plan to escape. Even so, and like the whole base is tipped off to the fact that they're going to escape, and they're going to use this as like a pretext as to why they can just execute them all, which is what they wanted to do anyway, but the government was giving them problems about doing it. But like they're just allowed to escape anyway, and they're shit at their jobs. And then
And like their
and then
new prototype Double X gets stolen. Like
yeah,
security.
very tight security. I mean, admittedly, this is a new government. It makes sense for the guys to be a little green, but it's not like the Frieden crew are soldiers or anything. They are not.
Yeah, they're not like hardcore battle hardened mercenaries. Like they're just like a ragtag bunch of individuals.
Yeah, and so this Carrick guy, basically just to prove Tifa wrong, because he has this grudge against Newtypes, and this is a kind of neat moment. He decides to go with Tifa, and to help the Frieden crew because Tifa had this vision about her being taken away, and it's like, hey, this is my opportunity to prove a new type wrong. I'm gonna sign up to this. And he's got his death wish anyway. He's aimless, purposelessness. So he decides to do that, and of course he ends up having a heroic sacrifice death. And this is sort of like supposed to be like a turning point for Garrett. Up until now, he's been sort of like happy-go-lucky, sort of the same. Doesn't take things too seriously. Tifa mentions that he doesn't change. Well, this is an actual change for him. And after this, he starts taking things more seriously. He starts taking the threat of the new United Nations very seriously. And he starts getting actually drawn in to working on his mobile suit and moving away from the moving away from just trying to kiss up to Tifa all the time.
Yeah, which leaves Steve a little bit isolated because he
A
sort
little bit,
of
yeah.
he sort of stops paying so much attention to him, and nobody else seems to care about her anyway.
About Tifa, yeah,
Yeah.
the people that care about Tifa are like Jamil, Dr. Tex, who's a totally neat character. He's like this enigmatic, really sophisticated
Mysterious
doctor,
doctor.
experienced. He's like the wisest character in the whole show, and you can tell he has all this experience in life behind him.
But we don't
Uh,
get to see it.
we don't get to see it. Actually, in this arc, they run into a Neil L, and she's captured by them as well. And he like tips off Neil about the fact that they're trying to escape. And Neil tells on them, hoping to like get out. Of course, it backfires because she's just taken down to the firing line. The same with the rest of them. And and Doctor Tex says a line to her where it's basically like, "Well, I guess it didn't turn out, but even then, I don't really want to view it as a mistake. I don't view it as a mistake because ultimately, I'm a doctor, and a doctor's duty is all about seeing the best in others and doing the best to like treat them, etc." And so I thought that was a kind of nice little moment,
Yeah.
but. But anyways, of course, Neil helps them break out after that. The next step, the next arc is just they go to this random kingdom somewhere, Estardo. Young prince, he's being controlled by his advisors. He doesn't know what to do. They're being reincorporated by the new United Nations Earth. Uh, the UN Earth manages to destroy one kingdom, then get the other kingdom to turn against the main kingdom, leaving them sort of like out in the cold. And they have to end up surrendering, and the Freedom crew, after helping them out for a while, has to like completely fall back and get away.
I thought that this arc was too long. And I'm
I
not.
agree.
Yeah. And I guess we are not the only ones because the guys saw at the Neon review that you linked last time. They also thought that this arc was too long, especially given that I mean the next arc is going to be the final arc, and that kind of obviously got a little bit compressed, even if all the plot threads in the ending do get tied up. So I guess what would be the point of this Estado whatever arc?
I couldn't really well. One is world building for the rest of the what's going on in the rest of the world and what the new federation is doing. So that's actually quite reasonable. Outside of that, though, I have to agree. In terms of character development for like the crew itself, there's not much point. We do get to see like we we do have like 4 battles in a row of like against ace pilots that the Frost brothers set up, and these are actually pretty nice battles. And one of and that's part of the reveal. That's although they've already had this reveal, so it's like it's revealed twice that the Frost brothers are manipulating to try and like destroy all the Newtypes because they are category Fs, one low between Newtypes, and they're just resentful. And that's that's sort of like the whole purpose of the arc, to be honest. Yeah, so yeah, it's definitely something that could have been squished down. I do enjoy it as like providing world building for other areas outside of that have had civilization develop further, but even so, you're right, it's not necessarily something that's necessary. Uh, I'll actually hand it over to you, Bio Gundam, because I need to go to the restroom real quick.
Yeah, like I didn't mind the arc, but yeah, it was one or two episodes a bit too long. Um, I mean, the only thing we get out of it is like the Playboy guy, fucks off for a little bit because he didn't want to get involved in the war in the first place, and then he like comes back after getting involved with a few like gorillas or stuff like that. But yeah, like
Yeah, and a woman too, of course.
yes,
Um,
of course, he's got to get a crumb.
yeah. So I guess I guess in terms of
Excuse me for a second. I just need to mute my mic. Excuse me for a second.
yeah. Okay. Okay. So that just leaves me. I hope.
Sorry about that. I heard like what sounded like a woman screaming almost for a second.
Is everything all right?
Yeah, like just for a second, right? I heard just like noise, and I'm like, what the fuck is that? And I just had to take off my headphones for a second. Like, am I hearing things? Like,
Okay.
okay, well, it's gone quiet now, so it's
Yeah.
probably nothing. But like, I just heard I heard like someone screaming, like, hey! And I'm like, what the fuck? It's like 1 o'clock. What the fuck is going on?
Yeah. I mean, as Heracles was saying, is that it helps the arc does help to give an idea about what's happening in other parts
Yes.
of the world which are not
I think
shown.
it does good for that. I think it's very good for that. Like, it showcases that, like, like some areas aren't as bad as others, and obviously humanity is slowly rebuilding. I do like it for that. Like, it showcases that, yeah, like humanity is slowly rebuilding, but it's going to take some time.
Yeah, yeah. Also, like there's other stuff not related to the main characters, which is going on.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, that's also a good thing, right? Like they actually do feel like they're part of a world. Like the world doesn't revolve around them. Like they're just privy to some of these events. Like they just happen to be there.
yeah, feels very fresh after Gundam Wing. Yeah,
Yeah, the world literally did revolve around them.
yeah. Okay, what else? So I guess yeah. How does this arc help with the new type team? I guess it does help through because of the reveal about the Frost brothers. Yeah, trying to kill off
Yeah, but them
the.
being like category Fs or whatever the fuck, right? Is like, okay, so they can't use the flash system. They're still scary as fuck anyway. Like,
Yeah,
that's the thing
yeah.
they can't. That's the thing they can't make sense to me. Is like these guys are terrifying as fuck mobile suit pilots.
Yeah, I mean, I think like with the with having artificial new types, new type dolphins, and now category Fs. I think, and also Tifa, who is a new type, born on Earth. Like they're all trying to like question, what is a new type exactly. Basically, they're saying, that it sort of does help to the conclusion, I guess, which we'll discuss. Um, so yeah, it does help with that. Do the mechs get so the mechs get some power ups. So like
Yeah, the mix get upgraded. Yeah, because they get like really badly damaged throughout these recurring battles, so they need to get upgraded. I thought their new upgrade forms looked pretty decent. I didn't think they were too bad.
yeah, I mean, I did sometimes feel though like like we don't really get see them doing that much scavenging for parts. Kid just declares that, oh, I got a lot of parts which I want to try on on your mechs, and that's basically it.
Just for a second.
Yep. Hopefully, it's not another woman screaming.
I'm sorry about this, folks. Like, this some fucking weird as fuck noises outside my door. My room, like my door.
I'm back.
Okay, yeah. About Gundam heard a woman screaming, and there's weird noises outside of his door.
Yeah, like, give me a second. I'm just gonna like go look outside. If I'm not back within like 10 minutes, be worried. Be back in a second.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So we were talking a bit about uh, um, uh, the mechs. I guess the fact that they got upgrades.
Hmm.
What I guess they were decent, but I also felt like Kid just got the parts for them out of nowhere. I guess in this arc, it is kind of explained that he gets help from the Estado or whatever people. Um,
Yeah, they tend to get parts of Noah. They also don't explain how on earth the Freedom pays their people, because they're paying them. Most of these guys are contractors, or at least the mobile suit pilots are. And how on earth they're making the money, like, is
Yeah,
never.
like the gold bars. Like, did this world just become based and they now have like a gold backed currency or something?
Well, like everyone uses gold because that's all they got, and paper means
Yeah,
nothing.
yeah,
yeah,
But
I think it's implied that basically it's through scavenging ancient. No, not sorry, not ancient. I mean, it's from 15 years ago. Military sites for military equipment, essentially. That's what I thought
yeah,
anyway. But we never get to see that much. Them selling and buying stuff.
yeah.
Uh,
Like we
yeah,
only see like
exactly.
we only see like a couple of scenes of it. Like it would be nice if we got a bit more of that, like a bit more of that scavenging kind of survival aspect.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. That's something that was just sort of like not a huge part
yeah,
of it.
I guess we were just supposed to assume that Jamil had already collected enough wealth to pay them
Yeah,
off.
like they have money, don't question it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
essentially. But it would have been nice then at least to see where the money was stored or something like that. Um, uh,
I mean, one dude literally had like a giant mobile suitcase full of gold. So
yeah, yeah. Um,
Yeah. The but anyways, yeah, after that, they just sort of where were we? What were we talking about?
Estado,
the city.
yeah.
Still on a starter. Yeah. The only other thing that happens is like Willoughby meets a woman and he's sort of going steady with her. Uh, but he like sort of tells her, but she can like sort of notice that he's got someone else on the Freedom, and it turns out that she's part of the resistance. And oh, what do you know? The resistance is getting cracked down upon by the new UN Earth guys now. So she's about to get gunned down, and she basically tells him like, "Hey, you have someone back on the Freedom who you're actually serious about, so you should like go see him." Uh, which I felt was unnecessary, and also the fact not interesting because it had always been Rorobi that had been kind of the serious one towards Sala, whereas Sala was like, Jamil, you're just some, and sort of looking down on Rorobi. Uh, that it felt like unnecessary, and it felt like they don't know what to do with Rorobi besides more make him playboy more.
Yeah, because
And it's
yeah,
really kind of
Yeah, that was
he
it.
boring.
doesn't really
It's
have a
kind of his
reason.
favorite arc for the show. Is just like he's just kind of a playboy.
Yeah, he doesn't really have much of a reason to be on the Freedom.
No.
I mean, even the other guy, what's his name?
Ritz.
Yeah, even Ritz. I mean, he made his
Yeah,
gold
he had a family
already.
though. Yeah, he has a family to support.
Yeah,
That's
but
fair.
didn't he already give them enough gold forever or something? Um, I,
Yeah, but he still wants to keep making more, I guess.
I,
And he also sort of likes the Freedom Crew. Compared to Roaby, uh he's more sentimental, but also like overly defensive.
hmm,
So sort of like that combative, friendly guy.
hmm. Okay.
Yeah, for some reason he reminds me of an Australian.
Yeah, yeah, I can see
Like
that.
the first thing I see when I think of him is like, is this guy Australian? And I don't mean like his accent or anything like that. Like he just kind of comes off to me as like an Australian dude.
Yeah, I can sort of see that.
Okay. So yeah. So that's basically the you know the space
Mhm.
arc, right? I guess the build up to it. Um. Yeah. I guess we get to see more. The Frost brothers doing some more manipulation and whatnot. And yeah, uh, but yeah, I mean, at the same time, there's nobody within the whatever United Nations or whatever the Federation, or let's just call it, who can
Yeah, they're
oppose.
they're
Yeah.
just like on their own, and that kind of makes them less intimidating because it's like it's just two dudes now against a whole bunch of people, and Chara Isabel had like an army behind him.
Well, technically, these guys have the whole Federation army behind them, but they're also trying to screw them too.
Yeah.
Um. Yeah. So anyhow, so the Frost brothers decide to destroy the uh, I guess the place where they did human experiments on new types, because they hate
Yes,
new
you do.
types. And yeah, so this is where we find out, oh, the colonies are still around, and Tifa gets kidnapped. I can't remember how, but anyhow,
She
Yeah,
gets
one.
kidnapped.
Yeah, because
again she gets kidnapped again.
absolute dumbasses. Jamil and crew decide to go into this new type laboratory, and which is owned by like the new Federation. And Jamil goes to like they're exploiting new types. This is horrible. You should really break ties. Like once they've landed and like sitting around a coffee table, and a lady's going like, "No way! They pay me money. I don't have the moral scruples you do." On point. It's like, you absolute idiot, Jamil. Of course, they get out of it fine, but there happens to be like a space colonist, like sleeper agent in there, and so he like steals Tifa away and takes her up to space. Uh, and so the next episode, like they flat out, you could say this is actually a little
Contrived.
so. I mean, I'm sort of alright with that. What's the more selfish thing is like the whole Frieden crew sacrifices the Frieden just so that they can get Garrett on a shuttle to go to space. A shuttle that happens to be by with like another Space Revolutionary Army guy, and they like sort of make a deal with them. Garrett goes up into space. He tries to be like nice with the Space Revolutionary Army dudes, but they're like giving him the runaround. They're basically going to detain him indefinitely until he openly joins their side. So he just breaks out, leaves, hangs out with some rebel guys against the Revolutionary Army, who apparently rule their government with a velvet fist and are gearing up for another war, and also just sort of uh, their leader is a little bit of a dick. He says blatantly, point blank, "I am the one who decides what new types are." You can sort of understand where he's coming from, and new types do mean a lot to him. But he also he's very Machiavellian. Uh,
Oh yes,
A-
insanely.
yeah, I don't remember what the fuck his name is. I never remember the
Zidel,
names.
Zidel Russell or something. At least that's what it says here.
Okay, yeah. Idol Rasa.
Yeah.
I,
Anyhow, he's the leader of the colonists, I guess, who are on Cloud 9 or whatever the colony
yeah,
was called.
Cloud9 is the name of their home their home
Man, that name sounds
colony.
really familiar. Where have I heard that before?
Hmm.
Dun, 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 dun,
But they
dun.
actually have like some nice scenes with Tifa where he talks with him, the space colony leader, about like the nature of new types. All the other guys around the space colony leader are trying to get him to acknowledge, hey, this Tifa girl, she has all these special powers. Like she should be like really powerful new type. We should publicize about her. But he goes like, she was born on Earth,
Can't be
and
a new type.
she can't be a new type. And if I admit this to everyone, then it undermines my theory that everyone who comes to space are new types. So I can't let her existence get out. And everyone else around him is sort of like frustrated. Tifa, Garrett has this great scene where they're about to use this colony laser to like blow up a huge portion of Earth with like Federation army and whatnot. They're sort of coming at it from the admittedly reasonable goal of, if there's another war to start out, the only advantage we have is first strike capabilities and technology. So let's do that now. Of course, they are the ones choosing to start a war without even attempting negotiations or even attempting to keep other things like that from starting. And Garrett like takes their colony laser hostage with his twin satellite cannon, uh, threatens them, gets them to hand over Tifa, and, and then
Yeah,
and then and then blows up the space colony because they were going to come after him anyways. Yes.
yeah, that was a nice move. Yeah. Uh,
Runs straight into the new Federation people, who immediately throw who immediately, I guess partially for world building purposes, take Garrett and Tifa to their leader. They have a nice roundtable discussion, and it's actually interesting where this Bloodman guy is their leader. Really, really old man, and it's interesting. Tifa is, of course, able to completely get a read on him. And he's this guy who apparently he's basically being full on manipulated by the Frost brothers. He wants to have this vision of himself as being a great leader and the great unifier. And so part of that, naturally, is bringing the space colonies under control. Even though a lot of the Federation Assembly is like, they're all right with unifying Earth, but they have very wary thoughts about actually going into
a big war again.
space.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, the world building in the show is actually very well done.
And
Uh,
the politics that
negoti-
take place make a lot of sense
yes, yes.
in context.
Yeah, negotiations sort of fail here, and it turns out the Freeton crew had gotten captured and are literally being loaded out of railroad boxcars and about to be machine gunned into ditches. And ev- they're not quite wearing stall helms, the new Federation guys, but they're sort of close.
Yeah. I did like the like how the new Federation uniforms kind of they kind of looked a little bit cheap.
Yeah. They're literally just like slacks and a dress shirt, and like that's it. And they have like sort of like a new Federation eagle on the side, and that's it.
Yeah, which makes sense given that they're piecing this out together now.
Oh yeah. Everything's like very rushed. Whereas the space colony dudes, they do have like sort of the more aristocratic look to them on all their uniforms, sort of like Xeon, and they do. And it also helps that like they haven't gone through any 15 years of disaster or anything like that. As far as they're concerned, everything's been fine the past 15 years, other than the fact that most of their colonies are gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's basically like business as usual for the most part.
Yeah.
So yeah, but so the crew of the Freedom, I think they get saved, right, by the guy with the Haman suit, whatever it's
Yeah,
called.
they get saved by Karis from the artificial new type from the earlier arc, which is sort of convenient that he showed up at that exact moment, but it's properly explained. They managed to steal, just so happened to steal a battleship that's just like hanging around and being underguarded.
The
I
Freedom
mean,
too. Yeah,
yeah, they name it the Freedom too. That's not
yeah,
his actual name,
yeah.
but they take it over. They go into space, and at this point, it becomes a goal of like trying to stop war from breaking out. And there's been like a line that they've been having going since like the mid 20 episodes of we can't repeat the same mistakes. And for them, it's like we can't repeat the same mistakes of these wars. We can't allow it to happen again. So as a result, uh, they we get to see an episode of these wars and of this war really kicking off in space, Federation versus Revolutionary Space Army. And eventually they find, but we've already been introduced to this idea of there's something on the moon called Dome. And this is in the heads of both Mr. Bloodman and the Space Revolutionary Leader. Both of them know about this thing, and both of them have a desire to get to the moon and get to this Dome guy. So they managed to get there. Like in the middle of the battle, in the middle of this giant battle, Dome puts out this message to both the sides and says, I want your leaders plus the Freedom crew to all make their way to Earth, to the moon. And both the two leaders are like so desperate to get to Dome anyways, they immediately agree to a ceasefire and they go, "Hey, let's do this." And there's this, and then the final episode
Yeah,
has
I
them
think.
revealing.
But by the way, I think that they also call that the Dome also wants the Frost Brothers to come, but they refuse to come. They destroy
Yeah,
the yeah.
yeah, they try and end the ceasefire because they're absolute shits.
um,
Yeah, they're just utter assholes. That's why they're Fs. F stands for fucking asshole.
Yeah.
yeah. So anyhow, so the leaders of either side, and the people on the Freedom too, I guess, uh, managed to get onto Dome, and it turns out that Dome uh, is the first new type, and he has been converted into a computer or something by the Federation guys, I guess.
Mm.
And he, this is somehow connected to the laser thing, which yeah, to the laser that the Gundam double Ets and the double Ets were able to use.
Use.
Um, and I don't know. What else is there to say? I guess the the new type, the first new type, gives a lecture to the people who came there.
Yeah, and I want to say the direction on this, in terms of like the shot placement, the imagery that they give, which is often they're sort of transported into like this giant light, and there's all these streaks of light going around them. It's very eerie, it's very ethereal, and it fits perfectly. It fits the scene absolutely perfectly. It's a perfectly done scene. And Dome admits to all the Gundam, everyone that's populated there. One, he was the first new type, and he was basically cut up by the new Federation people, the old Federation people, and his consciousness only like sort of barely survives in like some sort of computer or something like that. And he explains the idea that, well, all of you fight over this idea of new type. New type obsesses all you people. But really, what is a new type? It's nothing. It's a mutation, perhaps produced by the times, but there's not necessarily a huge commonality from new type to new type. Powers shift, are slightly different, and you people keep obsessing over them. You see them as your future. Why? There's no particular reason why this very small group of people who are tiny and a complete accident of nature, why should they be the ones to
Guide humanity.
guide humanity? You people don't have, not to mention the fact, and he lays this out, yeah, we can sort of predict the future, but not really. Tifa predicts the future half a dozen times, and Garrett, with his own willpower, is the one that proves it wrong each and every time. And so he makes the type the statement that new types are an illusion. As doesn't mean that in terms of like literally that they don't that these
I
powers don't
mean,
exist.
I mean,
They
that's
don't exist. It's not like they're not like Jesus, right? They're not if no new types aren't like Jesus Christ coming back. They're not the saviors. They're just extraordinary people or psychically gifted. Doesn't mean they're gonna be able to save the world or
Yeah,
save humanity from their ills. They're
yeah,
not God.
and also an idea. He's trying to push the idea that there isn't enough commonality from new type to new type for there to be a common definition is also like what he's trying to push. Which you can argue about that either way. And
I mean, if you look at like UC Gundam, like yeah, the powers are very similar, but how they express themselves is quite different. Like especially in terms of like the level of power and what they can actually do. So you do kind of get his point.
yeah,
Continue.
but I also feel like basically what he's saying is that like they're not that much more special than normal human beings.
Yeah, like they're
Yeah,
just like psychically gifted, or they have like really good empathy.
yeah.
yeah, but even so, if you're not willing to put in the effort, if you people aren't willing to push towards peace, the fact that there's new types around isn't going to make a lick of difference. And and he departs. And he says, "Farewell, everyone. The new era begins now." Which is a very, very interesting meta play on all of Gundam, because like in old UC, the new era is all about like everyone becoming new types, and that's sort of echoed by the space faction in this show. Instead, he's saying the new era is when we reject new types. The new era is when we accept them as not being important. It's a very nice twist uh, on an old idea and completely turning it around. And so we then cut to the the Frost brothers, who have started the fight again. They started the great battle again, and they decide that they're going to destroy everything. They
Yeah, they kill the leaders of both factions using the laser, I think.
yeah,
Yep.
they basically have a view of, we're going to destroy the whole, we're going to cause another ruinous war, and then when it's all over, we, the category Fs, will be the only ones left over, and everyone will worship us as new types, and we'll lead everything. And
Doesn't make a lick of
Garrett,
sense. Yeah.
Garrett's like, my gosh, you guys are petty. My gosh, you guys are just petty, vengeful fucks. Uh, and yeah, they absolutely are. Uh, and there's a nice scene where they power up their satellite launcher. Garrett powers up his twin satellite cannon. They shoot at each other. They blow each other up. And then it cuts to a very nice epilogue, as apparently the Frost brothers were defeated. And that epilogue is also like really nice. You don't see that in a lot of Gundam shows where it has this played out epilogue. And it shows like the futures for all the cast of characters, and really gives them all like something to do and a happy ending and a place that seems logical for them.
Including the Frost brothers for some reason.
Yeah, they're sort of like crippled and I guess forced to watch as the world moves on without them and without new types.
I think one of them is crippled, not both of them.
Yeah, one of them.
Yeah. So that was Gundam match. Yeah, I guess the biggest question, which I think we answered, was why is it that this was not, why was it cut from 13, or rather 49 to 39 episodes?
Yeah.
You think it's because of the arc which began when they started going off into the sea.
Yeah, it becomes very, very slow. The show is somewhat slow throughout, but it's especially bad then when it really slows to a crawl. And I can totally see how people just stopped paying attention, stopped caring,
Yeah,
and
and the
I totally get that.
yeah, and the other big thing about this show is the theme about new types. I don't know. I mean, I read some reviews where like people were complaining about like that they expected like there to be a bigger revelation or something like that it seemed something too obvious or whatever. You know, but I mean,
I mean, the ending does like the ending monologue. Even though I like it, it does come off a bit preachy. Of like, oh, it was so simple the entire time. It does come off a bit preachy in that way. But
I mean, it is undoubtedly preachy, but personally, I really liked it and enjoyed it.
yeah, like I
That's
don't
just
mind it. Like after rewatching it, I'm like, yeah, okay, this makes a lot of sense, but it does come off a bit preachy. Like it just came off a bit preachy to me.
hmm.
But yeah, I get what I get what the intent was. Newtypes aren't Jesus, right? They're not special. They're not like demigods, right? They're just normal flesh and blood people.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's.
Like a new type isn't like the Primarchs from Warhammer 40k, right? They're not like
Well,
demigod saviors. They're just the dude. They're just people.
the Primarchs from 40k aren't that either.
No.
Uh,
I mean, they worship as demigods, but they're not really demigods. Yeah,
so
continue.
yeah, so I guess let's go to ratings. I guess Heraclius, what would you rate Gundam Eds as?
I'd give it overall 6 out of 10. I mean, I summed up my review on it by basically saying, and it's a lot more concise than this if you're just tuning in at the end. If you want like a concise take on the show, you could just read that. But I really found with it that it feels like a half-baked masterpiece in some ways. I really like the setting is fantastic and the message is nice, but the characters the interesting thing about the characters is every single one of them is likable and there's a nice group dynamic with all of them. There really is. But you never get to see anything more of them. You never get to see Roby go through a really tough time, or Wits. I mean, or you never get to see Sala have to have her faith questioned, or get to see Dr. Tex and his backstory, or mentoring people as much, or you don't get to see anything like that, which is odd, very odd for what's essentially a arc-based character drama. That's what it theoretically is. Yet Garrett's like the only character it focuses on for the most part, and although there's all these other things that I like about it, fact is I have to cut it really hard because like on its like main purpose it's not fulfilling what it's supposed to be doing.
Okay, so what about you, Gundam?
I'm gonna have to give this maybe like like a heavy 5 out of 10, maybe a light 6. Like, I like the show, but the show is very unsatisfying in a lot of areas for me. Like, it just feels like as Heracula says, it feels a bit incomplete. Like, it feels like characters are just kind of there. Not many of them get development. We don't really get to know, like they're likable, yes, but we don't really get to like. It's like I mentioned to Heracula's like earlier before that like Gundam X feels like it's missing a lot of things, and like Gundam X in some ways it's just comes off as a bit half baked and half cocked in some areas, and it does
Yes.
feel like incomplete. And like you can see there are good ideas here. You can see it like there are good ideas here, but like this needed a few more drafts. Like this needed to go back in the oven.
Yeah, which is understandable given that they were making one Gundam series after another. Like literally a week difference apart in terms of how long until another one came out.
Now, despite that, right, this show is actually decently animated and actually looks much better than Gundam Wing. So, as far as like animation goes, it looks good, but content-wise, it's a bit half-baked. It's not a bad Gundam show, and it's definitely better than some of the other. I mean, out of all the side story stuff, this is probably like one of the most inoffensive ones they're out there. It's not like Gundam Age, which is just horrible, or Gundam Build Fighters, which I don't even know why that exists, but you know, just to sell Gunpla kits. But yeah, like Gundam X is like if you want a simple, nice Gundam show, there's a really nice ending concept. Go ahead, but you know, it's all right. It exists.
Okay, I give it a 7 out of 10. I did like the characters, but yeah, and also the theme about Newtypes, I thought that that was tying a nice bow on basically UC Gundam and the Newtypes there as well. About how they were used in the bow and so on. With that said, I mean, it just felt to me, as I've said a couple of times now, it just felt to me like a nice weekly kind of shonen series, where you tune in to see.
Yeah, like the show does come off as kind of like a kid version of Gundam, like especially if you compare it to some of the stuff that happens in like UC or other shit. Like, and I don't mean like kids showing like it's not serious, but like that is kind of like the tone. Like characters survive, like Heracula said, characters survive shit they shouldn't, or people don't die when they should.
Well, it's not like you have in Gundam Wing where you shoot the characters bleeding out of their head and they survive anyway. There's nothing like that. It's just stuff like their mobile suits survive are just sort of like able to survive things that they probably shouldn't. So it's not like it stretches credulity in that manner.
No, but in some ways it does kind of come off as that. But good, continue, good student.
No, I think yeah, I think that's probably enough. We are reaching the 2 hour mark. As well, I think we
Yeah,
covered.
I'm getting sleepy, and
Yeah.
like I had to dip. I'll hang around a few more minutes to talk about like out of stuff, some more stuff. But like I am going to be probably dipping in like 10 to 15 minutes after this. So
Right. So, anything else you guys want to say about Gundam Edge?
no, I mean as far as I'm concerned, I've said all I've had to say about it. I mean it's an alright Gundam show, and that's just it. Like that's all I have to really say. Like it's all right.
Oh yeah, one more thing. I guess one final thought then. I thought that a little bit it was like Eureka 7. Because you have.
Oh fuck yes, yeah. I like you definitely get those Eureka 7 vibes. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised that the people that worked on the show didn't work on Eureka 7.
Oh yeah, like I pointed out, like Garrett has a fanny pack, and like Renton in Eureka 7 has a fanny pack, and like I've never known other anime characters that randomly wear fanny packs around.
Yeah.
So that would seem to suggest at least some inspiration.
The symbolism
Yeah,
of the fanny pack.
Yeah, he even has like a sort of similar-ish setup in terms of like his clothing to Garrett. Although I'd say Renton, I wouldn't call him particularly similar to Garrett as a character. I mean, he's somewhat, but he's
No.
no, a lot more childish.
Yeah, I would say that the difference is that, for me at least, is that the characters here are actually likable, whereas in Eureka 7, I don't know, some of the people on that crew were kind of annoying. Yeah, that's about it. Anything else to add? No. All right. Well then, thank you for listening. Like, subscribe, comment, and whatever.